The grand piano stood at the center of Blackthorn Hall like a piece of surviving evidence. Everything else in the room had been changed. New drapes, polished floors, 300 candles arranged for a night that was supposed to end a war. Staff had tested the gallery's emergency snuffer lines that morning, the way they did before every gathering this size. But the piano had not been touched in 4 years, until today. Iris Vale set her case beside the bench and ran her fingers along the edge of the fallboard before lifting it. She did not need to see the instrument. She needed to hear it. A member of the household staff had moved the bench slightly to make room for a candelabra. Iris noticed the moment she sat. 3 centimeters, maybe 4. She stood up without sitting fully. "The bench has been moved," she said. "It was in the way," the staff member said. "It is in the wrong position now." A pause. "Could you place it back where the floor has a slight depression from long use?" The bench was moved back. Iris sat. She pressed a single key, middle C. The return told her the hall was tall, hard-floored, and unevenly damped along the eastern wall. She filed that away and began the work of listening to a piano no one had played in 4 years. Roman Dacre entered the hall at 6 in the evening. He had 20 principal delegates arriving in 2 hours, with nearly 300 attendants and household witnesses expected by the first performance. 3 houses that had been bleeding each other's shipping routes for 2 years. 1 table. 1 night. 1 chance to stop the dying before the hardliners in his own family used the failures as reason to replace him. He had arranged everything: the seating, the menu, the guards, the exits. The one thing he had not arranged was the sound coming from the piano. He stopped in the doorway, a low note, a long resonance, and then something wrong. A dry vibration from the direction of the eastern wall. Not loud, not obvious, but present in a way it had not been when he last stood in this room beside his mother. "Stop," he said. Iris lifted her hands from the keys. She did not turn around. "The instrument," Roman said. "What did you do to it?" "I tuned the upper register," she said. "I was about to assess the lower. That sound was not there before." "Which sound?" Roman crossed the room. He stood beside the piano and pressed the key himself. The same low note, the same resonance, the same dry vibration from the eastern wall. "That," he said. "I hear it," Iris said. "You caused it. I haven't touched the lower register yet." Roman looked at the piano the way a man looks at something he loves and cannot read. He remembered every note of the piece his mother had played in this room. He remembered the sound of her hands. He did not know the difference between a hammer strike and a damper wire. "If you damaged it," he said, "every house that buys from Dacre will know your name before midnight." Iris was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice had not changed. "You remember the note," she said. "I'm listening to what happened after it." She pressed the key again. The resonance filled the room. The dry vibration returned. And this time, in the silence that followed, Iris tilted her head slightly to the left. She pressed the key a 3rd time, softer. Then she turned toward the eastern wall. "The piano is not out of tune," she said. A pause long enough for the last vibration to die. "The room is breathing." Julian Cross appeared from the corridor behind Roman. He was 61 years old and had advised the Dacre family through the deaths of 2 leaders. He was the one who had suggested hiring Iris. He moved with the unhurried certainty of someone who had been in every difficult room and outlasted it. "The maintenance office reported new lining installed along the east wall," Julian said. "Their notes mentioned it might create an echo effect until it settles." He looked at Iris with the measured sympathy of a man managing a situation. "Perhaps what you're hearing is simply the material adjusting." "I'm not hearing echo," Iris said. "I'm hearing compression." "The difference being," Roman said. "Echo returns the same sound," Iris said. "Compression means something is holding air." She stood from the bench. She walked toward the eastern wall. Roman watched her move with the particular attention she always produced in people who had not seen her navigate a space before. She did not reach for the wall immediately. She stopped 2 meters from it and stood still. Then she placed one hand flat against the paneling. "There is a void behind this," she said. Roman looked at Julian. Julian's expression did not change. "The old maintenance corridor," Julian said. "It was sealed when the acoustic lining was installed." "Recently sealed," Iris said. "The resonance from this panel is different from the panels beside it." Roman said nothing. He looked at the wall, then at Iris. "I want this panel opened," he said. "Not yet," Iris said. Roman turned toward her. He was not accustomed to being told not yet in his own hall. "I heard something that might be pain," she said. I haven't proved a person. She said it plainly, without softening it. If someone is in there and we break through the wrong section, the structure could shift. If whoever put them there is listening, they'll know we found it. If there's a ventilation channel we don't know about, we could cut the air. Roman was quiet. Julian said, "We have guests arriving in less than 2 hours. You have until the first performance begins," Roman said to Iris. He looked at Julian. "I'll extend the opening reception by 30 minutes. Julian agreed without reaction. He left to arrange it. Iris turned back to the wall. She used the piano to read the room. Not because it was elegant, because it was the most powerful acoustic instrument available to her. She played low notes across the full lower register. Each one told her something. The density of the space behind each panel, where the void began, where it ended, how deep it ran. She identified a space roughly 2 meters wide and tall enough for an adult to sit. Near the floor, where the panel met the baseboard, there was a narrow gap around what felt like the edge of an old ventilation fitting. She played the E-flat below middle C. The panel resonated. The gap opened by a fraction. A sound came through. Not a vibration from the wood, not a residual echo. A breath, controlled, painful, held as long as possible before it had to release. Iris stepped back from the wall. "There is someone in there," she said. Roman had been standing 6 feet away. He crossed to her immediately. "How many?" he said. "I can only confirm one," she said, "near the floor, sitting or lying. There may be a second breathing source higher up, but I'm not certain yet." Roman was already moving toward the door. "I need you to be certain," Iris said. "I don't have time to wait for certain," Roman said. "If you act before I confirm the second source, you may open the wrong section," Iris said. "And if I wait, the guests arrive and whoever put that person in my wall knows exactly how much longer they have." But Roman was already dividing his men. The upper section was opened first. Inside they found a small leather bladder connected to a pressure valve. The valve was set to release at irregular intervals. It expanded and contracted with the vibration of the wall, and at a distance the rhythm read as breath. It held the search team on the wrong section for 11 minutes before Iris caught what was missing from it. No variation, no strain, nothing a body would do that a valve wouldn't. By then, 11 minutes was enough. When Roman's men reached the lower panel, the sound was gone. Iris said nothing for a moment. Then she said, "I gave them time." Roman did not raise his voice. He looked at the empty space where the void had been. "We gave them time," he said. "Where did they take him?" Roman walked back into the main hall. He stopped in front of his staff and said, loudly enough for the eastern corridor to carry it, that the acoustic assessment had confirmed nothing but a settling installation. He said Iris had failed to find any fault in the instrument. He said the evening would proceed as planned. He said it with the controlled irritation of a man who had wasted an afternoon on a professional's error. Iris stood near the piano and said nothing. She understood what he was doing. She used the time. She had not lost the trail. She had lost the sound. She walked the perimeter of the hall slowly, trailing one hand along the wainscoting at the height of a chair rail. She stopped where the baseboard changed texture under her fingertips. New wood. Slightly smoother than the surrounding panels, not the same craftsman. She crouched and placed her palm flat against the floor. A faint vibration, not from the hall, from the corridor beside it. Something with wheels had passed through recently. She followed the wall to the door at the far end. She pushed it open and stopped. The sound in the service corridor was almost entirely absent. Not quiet. Absent. The kind of absence that meant the space had been designed to absorb rather than reflect. Iris stopped just inside the doorway. She had mapped dozens of rooms in her career. She had never walked into a space that felt like it had been built specifically to erase her. "Tell me what's in front of me," she said. Roman had followed her. He had not touched her. He stood slightly to her left and described the space methodically, the way someone describes it who is learning what descriptions are for. "A stone passage," he said, 4 meters wide, running parallel to the hall. 3 doors on the left. A staircase at the far end, the ceiling lower than the hall, perhaps 3 meters. A sconce on the far wall, unlit. And near the second door, 2 parallel lines in the dust. "The width of a wheelchair," he said. "Or a medical cart. How long ago?" Iris said. Roman crouched near the lines and studied them. "The dust hasn't fully settled back," he said. "Recent." Iris stepped into the corridor. She moved carefully, placing each foot deliberately. When her shoulder came close to the wall, she adjusted without reaching for it. Roman watched this and said nothing. He had noticed, in the first minutes of knowing her, that she did not want to be managed through space. She wanted to be given information and trusted to move through it herself. "Is there anything metal running along these walls?" she said. Roman looked. "A brass rail," he said, "shoulder height, running the full length of the corridor. Old, tarnished." She touched it. She remembered what he had said earlier about the house, about the old service systems his mother had described. This was a signal rail, she said, for calling staff from the main rooms. "Yes," Roman said. "My mother told me about it. It hasn't been used in years." Iris struck the tuning fork and held it to the rail. The tone traveled. She listened to where it went. It ran through the wall, back into the hall, back to the eastern corner near the piano. "If someone in the hall holds something against the rail on that side," she said, "I can hear the difference in the tone. 2 short strikes means continue. 3 means the plan has been discovered. 1 long means stop the performance." Roman was quiet. Then he said, "You're asking me to perform the part of a man who doesn't know any of this." "For another 40 minutes, she said, "and trust that you'll hear me." She held the tuning fork out to him. He took it. Their fingers did not touch. She noticed the small gap he left. Roman said, "I trust you with the room." Iris said, "I trust you to follow the signal." They found Elias Rowe behind the 3rd door. He had been moved from the acoustic chamber to a smaller space between the inner and outer walls of the service staircase. The space was barely wide enough for a man to sit with his knees drawn up. He was conscious, barely. Roman pressed the door open slowly, describing each step to Iris as he moved. When the light reached Elias, the man tried to speak and produced only partial sounds. Iris crouched near him. She did not touch him until she asked. She placed 2 fingers against his wrist. His pulse was fast and shallow. "Tell me your name," she said quietly. "Elias," he said. "Can you move your feet?" A pause, then a small, effortful movement. "Good," she said. Roman found a small device in the inner lining of Elias's coat. A storage unit, sealed, requiring a verbal confirmation code to open. Elias looked at it and shook his head slightly. "Not here," he said. "Not safe." He had information to give. He gave it in pieces, in the order he could manage. "Jewel," he said. Roman waited. "Last measure," Elias said. "A breath." "Balcony," another breath, longer. "The conductor is in the stand." Roman looked at Iris. She was very still. "Conductor," she said, not repeating it as a question, placing it somewhere. "The music stand has a metal base plate," she said. "Not the corridor rail, a separate strip built into the stand itself. I noticed the reflection when I was assessing the hall. The acoustic return from that section was slightly wrong." She paused. "Conductor can mean the person leading the music." She paused again. "It can also mean a wire." Roman looked at her. "A wire," he said. "In the stand, running from the stand to somewhere else." Iris said, "He heard someone say it. He doesn't know what it means." "But you do," Roman said. "I think it means the music stand is not just a music stand." Roman did not arrest Julian. Not yet. To arrest Julian on Elias's half-spoken words and a theory about a wire was to give Julian time to activate something, deny everything, and vanish the evidence before anyone reached the balcony. Roman thought carefully. He had a man in critical condition who needed a doctor. He had a device that contained the financial evidence needed to prove a conspiracy. He had less than 40 minutes before the first performance. He acted on each of these facts in the order they mattered. Elias was moved through the service exit to a medical team Roman had brought in under the cover of catering staff. 2 people Roman trusted witnessed the transfer. The device from Elias's coat was photographed and secured. Roman returned to the hall. He found Julian near the front entrance and told him, loudly and in front of 3 staff members, that the acoustic inspection had been inconclusive and the evening would begin on schedule. Julian said this was wise. Roman noted the specific quality of Julian's calm. It was the calm of a man whose plan was still intact. Then Roman quietly reassigned the balcony guards, changed the technical lighting staff, and ensured that every exit from the east corridor was under his control without Julian observing any of it. He also had Lady Celine's seat moved 8 inches left, under the pretense of a sightline complaint, with a second, identically dressed chair and a decoy place card set in her former spot. He told her only that there was an unconfirmed threat and asked her, as a precaution, to wear a light garment beneath her dress that would stop a standard round at close range. She agreed without pressing for more. For the candles, Roman confirmed the gallery's snuffer hoods were wired in banks to 3 release levers, so that 3 staff members could collapse every hood in the room within a few seconds of each other, rather than walking 300 flames out by hand. He told the household staff, without explanation beyond a fire drill, that if the gallery bell rang twice, they were to stand exactly where they were and not move until it rang once more. Before he crossed the hall, Julian paused beside Roman and spoke quietly, as if offering nothing more than an old man's counsel before a difficult night. Peace teaches men to test the walls, he said. Fear teaches them to respect them. Roman took it at the time for advice. Julian moved to the music stand to review the evening's program notes. He was allowed to do so. Roman made certain 2 people watched his hands without appearing to. Iris returned to the piano bench. The guests were arriving. She could hear it in the way the hall changed. Footsteps on marble. The particular acoustic shift of a space filling with bodies. Low conversations. The specific resonance of a room with curtains drawn and drapes pulled against the December air. She waited until the movement settled. Then she began. The piece had been written by Roman's mother. Roman had told her this in the corridor, quietly, while they waited for the medical team to confirm Elias was stable. He had not said it as an instruction. He had said it the way people say things they have been carrying for a long time and find themselves saying without entirely intending to. His mother had believed that music could hold people in a room long enough to stop hating each other. The piece she had chosen for every occasion like this was a work she had written herself. Iris played it from the score Roman had placed on the stand. She played it slowly, more slowly than the notation suggested. She was not performing. She was listening. She played the opening passage and heard the room. She played the low section and identified the wire. Not immediately, gradually. As she worked through the lower register, the music stand's bass plate produced a faint sympathetic vibration that had not been there during her earlier assessment, a metallic resonance. She filed the frequency. She played the same section again. The vibration recurred. She played 2 tones above and below and mapped the range. A trigger wire ran from beneath the music stand's base plate, upward, along the inside of the wall, toward the balcony. She kept her hands moving. She extended the adagio section. She played the middle passage twice. She added a repeat that was not in the score. She needed more time to locate the position. She found it in the acoustic return from the second decorative column on the balcony, a small mass, metal, positioned behind the carved relief. Not a candelabra, not a bracket. Something that had been placed there recently. She struck a chord and held the pedal. In the resonance, she felt the response through the music stand's base plate under her left hand. The strip, not the corridor rail. She released the pedal. She pressed 2 short notes. Roman was in the hall. He heard her. He understood. Continue. Julian moved to the music stand during the transition between the opening program and the main piece. He stood beside it and opened his notes. His right hand dropped below the surface. Iris heard the tone change in the base plate beneath her palm, a small electrical pulse, not a sound, a vibration. She struck 1 long note and held it. A gallery bell rang twice. Roman's people cut the mains on his signal. The 3 release levers came down together, and the snuffer hoods dropped over every candelabra in the hall in the same breath. 300 flames, gone at once. The hall plunged into darkness. Not a power failure. 300 guests, told once already to freeze at the second ring of that bell, mostly did. The darkness was not entirely complete, but it was close. Iris continued to play, not the scheduled piece, something simple, low, continuous. She needed the resonance of the room to remain stable. She needed to hear. The hall filled with the sounds of 300 people adjusting to sudden darkness. Chairs shifted. Someone stood too quickly. A glass fell. She filtered through it. She was listening for 4 things. Weight shifting on the balcony. The mechanical sound of a safety mechanism released. Metal against stone. Breathing above the second column. The hardest part was not the noise. The hardest part was that the space had been designed for music, not for silence. Every surface that made the hall beautiful also complicated what she was trying to hear. She held her hands above the keys without pressing them. The resonance from the piece she had been playing still lived in the room. She used it. She heard weight shift. She said quietly but clearly, "Second column." Roman was beside her in the dark. He was the only person she could locate by breath. A guard he had posted at the piano bench for exactly this purpose repeated her words in a low voice toward the balcony team, a hand signal relay Roman had arranged during the extended reception. Once he knew the two of them might be separated in the dark. "Higher," she said. He moved right. The guard relayed it forward. Roman moved away from her toward the wall, trusting the relay to carry the rest. She heard his footsteps. She heard the sound of two more people moving through the dark on the other side of the hall. She heard the balcony creak. The mechanical sound she had been waiting for came a fraction of a second before the shot. The round struck the ceiling. Not Lady Celine. The ceiling, because Roman's men had reached the second column before the barrel found its target. The sound of the shot ended the careful silence. The mains came back on first, throwing hard electric light across the hall. Staff worked down the gallery, relighting the candelabra by hand, more slowly than they had gone out. Roman had the shooter restrained before half of them were lit. Julian had moved toward the east corridor the moment the lights went out. He did not run. He walked with the purposeful confidence of a man managing a crisis. He reached the east corridor door and placed his hand on the frame. The door did not open. He had a key. He produced it. The lock turned. The door remained closed. It had been bolted from the other side. Julian turned. Several of Roman's people were already behind him. Lady Celine was among the witnesses now standing in the corridor entrance. Julian looked at the gathering for a moment. He produced a second firearm from inside his coat. A guard disarmed him before he brought it level. Roman crossed the hall toward him. He was holding his own weapon. He stopped 2 meters from Julian. For a moment, he had every reason and every ability to end the conversation entirely. Julian had built a prison inside his home, had killed his mother's music into a countdown, had tried to frame a dying man for a murder he organized. Roman held the position for 3 full seconds. Then he lowered the weapon. "You needed me angry enough to finish your work," he said. Julian said nothing. "Not tonight," Roman said. The proof was assembled in the hours that followed. The trigger wire from the music stand's base plate was documented before it was removed. It ran to a small relay behind the second column on the balcony. Not a firing mechanism, but a cue. The shooter could already see Lady Celine from the balcony. What he needed was to know when the music would next swell loud enough to cover the sound of a safety mechanism releasing. Julian's press on the base plate, timed to the last measure, was that signal. The maintenance records for the east wall, when reviewed by the estate's financial archivist, showed that the acoustic lining, the new wood paneling, and the ventilation fitting had been installed through 4 separate contracts over 8 months. All 4 were signed under Julian's management authority. The device recovered from Elias contained transactions between Julian and a faction within 2 rival houses that had consistently profited from continued conflict. The transactions required Elias's verbal confirmation to unlock fully. This was arranged under witness 2 days later, when Elias was stable enough to provide it. Lady Celine, when asked by Roman directly, produced a written warning she had received 4 weeks earlier, anonymous, telling her the planned seating arrangement at Blackthorn was not safe. The terminal that had sent the message was traced to Julian's administrative access. He had sent the warning himself, not to protect her, to ensure she moved to a position that gave the balcony a cleaner line. Roman read the confirmation of this without expression. Then he said, to the assembled representatives, "I controlled the doors. I failed to account for what happened behind them." He said it once. He did not elaborate. Lady Celine did not sign the full peace treaty that night. She signed a ceasefire agreement, a commitment to joint investigation, a requirement that any ceremonial space used for future negotiations be assessed by an independent acoustic and structural specialist before use, and a statement that both parties would return to the table when Julian Cross's network had been fully dismantled. It was not everything Roman had arranged the evening to achieve. It was the beginning of something that might last. Iris was offered a formal position within the Dacre household 3 days later. The title was Independent Acoustic Conservator for Dacre Ceremonial Spaces. The responsibilities were precise: assessment and maintenance of the Great Hall, the acoustic meeting rooms, the old resonance chambers, and any structural modification affecting sound behavior. Authority to suspend use of any space where assessment revealed anomalous acoustic return. Access to all maintenance and renovation records affecting structural acoustics. Right to require independent architectural review before any wall, ceiling, or floor modification in the ceremonial wing. Reporting authority to the Ceasefire Council, rather than exclusively to the Dacre family. Iris read the terms. She asked one question. If I identify something Roman doesn't want found, am I required to report it? Yes, said the person presenting the terms. Then I accept, Iris said. Roman had also asked that the east chamber not be sealed. He had asked Iris to assess what could be done with it. She worked with an architect over the following week. The space was converted into a resonance chamber with independent ventilation, an acoustic slot opening into the main hall, a signal bell accessible from inside, and no exterior lock. A space that had been designed to keep a person silent became a space where no sound could be contained indefinitely. Several weeks later, Iris returned to Blackthorn to complete the piano restoration. She was working through the upper register when she became aware that someone had entered the hall. She knew by the way the room changed, a specific acoustic signature. "You're on the left," she said. Roman said, "How do you know? You stop breathing when you're waiting for an answer you cannot order." He did not respond immediately. "I wanted to ask," he said finally, "whether you would have dinner with me." Iris stopped playing. "Is that a command?" she said. "No." A pause. "It is a request. I am still learning the difference." Iris moved along the bench and indicated the space beside her. "Sit down," she said. He sat. "May I?" she asked before positioning his hand. He said yes. She placed his right hand on the keys. "Press the third key from the left," she said. He pressed it. The note rang through the restored piano and returned from the walls without distortion. "What do I hear?" Roman said. "What the room sounds like when nothing in it is hidden," Iris said. She placed her hand beside his on the keys and played the continuation. For a moment they listened to the hall together. Then Iris reached up and took hold of his lapel and brought him down toward her. She kissed him. He did not move until she had decided the moment was finished. Then he said, "The piano is ready." Iris said, "You're improving." The formal signing of the peace agreement took place 6 weeks after that. The east wall of the hall now had a carved opening where the sealed chamber had been. The acoustic slot was fitted with a brass grill and tuned to resonate at the frequency of the old signal rail. Iris sat at the piano. She played the piece that had belonged to Roman's mother. She played the low passage. She played the E-flat that had once revealed a hidden breath. The notes sounded through the hall. The response that came back was clean, even, unbroken, no compression, no hidden voice, no weight behind the wall that should not be there. The sound traveled out to the vaulted ceiling, to the gallery, to the curved end of the hall, and returned. She held the note until it dissolved completely. "Now the room is listening," she said. At the signing table behind her, 3 houses put their names to an agreement that promised, at minimum, to keep talking. Roman stood to the side, not watching the signing. He was listening to the room. He had not heard it here before. He had not known a room could sound like that. Now he did.